Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome. You're listening to Money on Tap. I'm Ben Brayshaw, joined here with Seth Crossman today. Dan Micklon's on vacation. We hope he has a great time, and we hope he doesn't come back anytime soon. So with that, we have a special guest today. We have Christina Cafari joining us, and she's with Prudential. She's the director of sales technology. You know, we were just taking a totally different slant this week, Seth. We're going to break out. We're not going to do money in the news. We're going to bring in Christina and talk about some of the struggles that we've had with our clients and kind of go through that. But before we do that, Seth, you have any thoughts?
Sure. First of all, I miss Dan and Dan. Ben speaks for himself. I hope you come back soon. And it's always a lot of fun to have Dan on the show. So, yeah, other than that, I mean, gosh, there's so much information that we're going to cover in here. And everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're at, you are a part of the story today. And this show's all about you. And it's all about three-dimensional investing. It's all about protecting you from fraud and identity theft and what's out there and happening right now in that industry. So you can be aware and protect yourself. And you know what? I'm so excited to have Christina on the show today because you know what? She's such a pro and she's such a wealth of information and knowledge. You know,
I've had a number of clients. I mean, the savviest of savvy tech. You know, it doesn't really matter where their walk in life is. It's not just older people. I can talk a little bit about some of the pre-notions that people have about identity theft. But I've had so many clients that have been hit by identity theft, have caught it, and are scared to death. And I've had people who have been afraid to share identity theft in embarrassment. And I think I'm really excited to talk about how to get past all of that, to really find some clarity around how to deal with this stuff and allow people to feel free to kind of recognize that they're not alone in this. And it happens to almost everybody. And I think that's what is scary to me, Seth.
It's out there, folks. It's, it's every day. I'm just like, I cannot believe every day there's a call, there's a text, there's a phone call, there's an email. I'm never surprised at the creativity of fraudsters out there and how they are able to bypass our safeguards, the stuff that we feel like we should know to say no about.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. We have Christina Cafari here with us. She's the Director of Sales Technology with Prudential. And it's just, we're talking about identity theft, and stick around. We've got solutions for you on how to help yourself avoid some of these pitfalls. And I'm excited to bring that back to you. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, we have a lot of fun doing this show, Money on Tap, and Ben and I have been financial planners for years and years, and our goal here with you is to bring you into the room, have the conversations that we have. We think these are critical conversations for you, but we understand this is a limited space, and what we'd love to do is to open the doors to you with us at Brayshaw Financial Group, so you could experience what it means to have three-dimensional planning in your life. Let's take a look at all sides of your situation, your scenario, and see how we can put together the best plan possible, taking into account your risk. How much can you have in the market? How much do we need to have set aside and doing different things for your life. That's what we do as planners, how we engage with you, and we welcome you to do that with us. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Now, if you have $250,000 that are investable assets today, our planning is free to you. We want you to have the playbook to have a successful experience in retirement. Give us a call, 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Ben and I welcome you to Brayshaw Financial for complete wealth management.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. I'm Ben Brayshaw, joined here with Seth Krussman. Today we have a kind of an interesting show and a special guest. We have Christina Cafari. She's the Director of Sales Technology for Prudential Retirement and Life Distribution. Christina's been with Prudential for over 10 years, and today we're kind of taking a jump out of our traditional investment conversation and really talking a little bit about how to protect yourself in today's world, both from a very significant and serious financial area, and that's identity theft. Doesn't matter age, doesn't matter your situation or scenario. We all seem to see it happen around us. Christina, she started out her professional career as a financial advisor in Southern New Jersey, and she served as an internal sales consultant. She has a wonderful college background. She played soccer at St. Rose. She was a 2011 All-American, 2011 Academic All-American, as well as Player of the Year and Woman of the Year for 2011, which is just a tremendous honor to have her on this show, and super excited. If you have questions about this, you can reach us at 855-226-8551. You can also email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. I want to dive right into this, Christina. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate having you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is a topic that is, I get an email every day asking me to give my credit card or to bring money in from some country out there and so forth. So explain to me why it's important to understand identity theft today.
Well, I would say it's important for a number of different reasons, but to really get down to the basics, I would say due to the state of our world, it is rife with cyber breaches, malware, ransomware attacks, and really just rampant with identity theft. According to CNBC, they report that identity fraud cost Americans about $56 billion in 2021, with about 49 million consumers falling victim to identity theft. And really, the bulk of these losses, about $43 billion of that $56 billion, stemmed from identity theft scams, where criminals actually interact directly with consumers to get their hands on their information. And they use a lot of different methods. Some of the more familiar ones that we're seeing more today are robocalls and phishing emails. They're probably the most average, most common ones we're seeing. But on average, we've seen that victims lose about $1,100 each incident when it comes to identity theft. And also, one last statistic I want to be able to share in the opening that I think is really helpful to a lot of folks out there is married women, due to our research, have been the most common victims of identity theft. And I think it's really important to discuss these topics and really educate consumers. I think every individual should be fluent in today's risks and armed with protection strategies that they can implement immediately into their day-to-day lives to better protect themselves and also better protect their family members and their loved ones.
When I think about identity theft and having this in here, you're telling, hey, listen, these numbers are enormous and so forth. I can tell you that we work with a lot of both married women and divorcees and widowed women who I can tell you there's a large number of them that I can tell you statistically I feel like more of them are vulnerable to that kind of identity theft issue. I mean, I've had clients who were working with attorneys that were there was a time when there was a selling a piece of real estate out of country, and they were working with a U.S. based attorney, and then all of a sudden it turned out that the other legal law firm was actually fraudulent, and her own attorney didn't even know. And it's just scary how much stuff is out there that's a potential problem.
I couldn't agree more with that. I think it's really one of those items where criminals have a million different ways they can get their hands on our money. And I think that there is no shortage of these stories that when you hear them, they're so shocking and they seem so out of the blue. But at the same time, when you start looking at all of these identity theft numbers, you realize that these types of scams are happening day in and day out in different ways to all different types of people.
Yeah, so there's some interesting information around the how and the why criminals and cyber criminals are doing this. What are you finding is really happening today?
Well, today there are a number of different things happening, and it is different than maybe what has previously happened in the past. And so that is a great question. I'd love to focus on what we need to worry about today in the now. Since the start of the pandemic, the FBI reports that cyber attacks have increased by over 300%. And the three most common types of cyber attacks are espionage, ransomware, and phishing attacks. Now, when we talk about espionage, that really accounts for about 25% of all of these cyber attacks. But that's probably not something that's really going to happen on an individual basis. Probably not something on the consumer level.
I hear the word espionage and, James Bond comes to mind or something like that. So this sounds pretty high level. So, but we're all experiencing espionage. Would you agree in that capacity?
I think so, because when you really take a look at the definition of espionage, it's really the theft of information or confidential data from governments, companies, or natural persons. So I do think it has that James Bond sound, but at the same time, to your point, we all are experiencing this in a lot of different ways.
I just hear that and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm thinking of our listeners being like, espionage. I'm just concerned about someone tapping into my checkbook. That's really what it is. So it's interesting. But go ahead. I know you were going to go on to the second one.
Well, I think some of the other ones that are definitely more common, and I think we can probably relate to a little bit more, would be ransomware. And we hear about this pretty often. So the most recent one was the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, where really what is happening is malware is deployed and it's made to hold a victim's information for ransom. So in the simplest of terms, you cannot access files, databases, or applications until that ransom that's demanded is paid for in full. Now, the third and by far the most common type of cyber attack that we're all experiencing would be phishing attempts. And for some of us, we think this is a little bit easy or we are able to avoid it. But the truth is these scams are working, and they are working at unprecedented levels. And phishing is really just the fraudulent practice of sending emails pretending to be from a reputable company. And the idea is to trick individuals to reveal their personal information, such as passwords, credit card numbers, banking, routing information. And what we're finding is that because these emails look so real, a lot of folks are falling victim and accidentally giving away their own personal information, almost kind of handing it over to the criminals.
Do fraudulent phone calls count as phishing as well? Or does it have to be an email or, smishing by text?
So that's a great question. So SMS would be it coming as a text message. It's also called smishing. But we do not have a name for the calls that are coming. So what we typically call them would be robocalls. And those are slightly different, but it is the same concept. You might get a phone call from someone that's pretending to be from American Express or Capital One or Marriott, and they will try to get or convince you to give away your personal information. I've
had that happen. And here's one of the things that I found. When am I vulnerable? Is usually when I'm distracted. Like I'm driving, I'm not texting and driving. I'm just, answering the call. It's a credit card company. I'm like, well, I'm sure they're calling for good reason or something like that. It was recognizable. It was the actual person that I've heard in the previous legitimate credit card calls. Like that voice, I was like, oh yeah, I know who that is. And then I just had to stop for a second, pause, and give myself a second, and then realize, okay, if there's something going on with the credit card company, I can call them and find out what's happening. Something else very similar. OHSU is the medical hospital here in Portland. And, I got a call from them, wasn't paying attention and was wondering what was going on. The next thing I know, I'm talking to PG&E, which is our power company here. And I was just kind of going along with the call. And then the next thing I'm transferred over to the person that's going to help me make sure my power stays turned on. And I was like, hey, how can I help you today? And this guy sounded like he was like one day out of prison. He was like, not what you can do for me. It's what I'm going to do for you in that voice. And I was like, whoa, thank you for really making me aware of what's happening at this moment, because I was just kind of trucking along with where they were sending me. Again, I had to stop myself and take a step back and realize, okay, if this is something that's important, I can deal with it later. It doesn't have to happen right now. And I can contact them to make sure that I'm going through the proper channel.
Well, you're listening to Money on Tap, and I'm Ben Brayshaw, joined here with Seth Crustman and our special guest, Christina Kafari, who is the Director of Sales and Technology over at Prudential, and she's walking us through identity theft questions and concerns. If you have questions about this, you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. As we're talking about these phishing things, Seth, and it's funny that you say that because literally my 19-year-old son just got a phone call from Verizon before we did this show asking about his phone replacement and everything else and so forth, and handed the guy his credit card over the phone. But the guy knew information. He was like, well, how would he know that? And this, next thing you know, calls Verizon. It's not him, cancels his card. So that was literally like an hour ago. And I mean, he's on top of this stuff. He knows what, he's trying to avoid and so forth. And it's just funny. I mean, everybody is susceptible to it. And you're right. It catches you. He's working. He's like, I was just working and I wasn't really thinking about it. And yeah, I returned my phone. And so, yeah, this stuff, it doesn't matter. And I think for older people, they feel embarrassed because they feel like, well, I could have known more or done better if some of the younger people who avoid this stuff. But it's everybody's vulnerable to this stuff. Can you add a little more detail explaining phishing and strategies for us, Christina?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's give us some tips and pointers to really be able to avoid this. I think there are two important factors when we talk about phishing attempts. The first, and we kind of touched upon it, is the more distracted you are, the more you're rushed. However, there are often indicators or clues helping us determine it's a phishing or a smishing message. And there's really 5 top indicators to look for in these emails. The first is going to be poor grammar or misspelled words. So if you notice that the tenses of words are off or that there are some common words that are misspelled, that's a really good indication. It could also come from a suspicious email address. So typically speaking, it will appear that it's coming from Netflix or Capital One or Apple. But when you click on the email, you'll notice that it's just a random string of numbers and characters. So that's indicator number 2. Indicator number 3 is a generic or a non-personalized greeting. So the message will say, hey, Verizon customer, or hey, American Express customer, as opposed to saying, hey, Christina, or hey, Ben. There's also going to be a couple of other ones. So outdated or a poor quality logo. And then the last one and the most important one is an urgent or a threatening tone. Now, I know oftentimes tone is hard to tell through an email or a text message, but anytime there's an immediate push to action, that's a really good indicator that it is a phishing attempt. Typically speaking, reputable companies that you do business with aren't going to reach out to you for no reason and ask you to provide all of this sensitive information. I one time clicked on one of these forms, and it was a form for Netflix where they asked me to verify my account information. And when I clicked on the link just to see for purposes of this presentation, I was really curious to see all the information they asked for. They asked for my name, my address, my phone number, my date of birth, my social security number, 2 credit cards, and then my bank routing numbers. So right off the bat, when you're getting these types of requests, red flags should be flying everywhere, right? Why would Netflix ever need all of that information? And so the silver lining here is that if you realize it, right? If before I had submitted or selected submit or enter and sent that information go, if you just click out of it, you haven't done any damage. So there is some silver lining here for us. Once you see that it is a phishing attempt, you can very quickly get out of it, delete it, report it, and move on.
I've seen the ransomware work in a similar way where people click into it and then it's like, it's over. That would be my caution around that. Is that something I should be aware of or be cautious around when I see a suspicious email of not even clicking into it because of something like that?
Yeah. So as a best practice, what we always like to say is go directly to the source. And what I mean by that is once you receive an email that looks a little suspicious, or maybe you just weren't expecting it. Maybe everything in that email looks perfect. But the idea here is that in this world, we can't exactly trust all of the emails that we get. So because of that, whenever you're getting a request, verify information, click on this link, there's a big issue, we've locked your account. One of the best things to do is go directly to that source, right? So don't trust any information in that email. Close out of it and either go to your browser and log into your account, maybe go to your phone and log into your app. Or for some of our more old school folks, you can turn the card over and give that credit card company a call and let them know, hey, I got this email. I just want to make sure that there's nothing going on with my account. And so we always say go directly to the source. Close out of that email and get directly to that company in a different way, because you can no longer rely on the information and the contact information that's coming through that email.
I get calls from people or organizations. I'm like, let me call you back because I'm just unsure. And they actually sound legitimate, and I can kind of sense it's legitimate, but I'm like, let me call back. And I do. I turn my credit card over. I go to my account statement. I look up in the email or so doing that automatic, always saying, I'm going to contact you. Don't ask them for their number to call them back at. Don't do that. And,
exactly.
And it seems to me like I always, when I get these emails, I mean, they can be fraudulent when they say .com or .whatever, but sometimes they like .co or .uk or, that like the end of the email address you can tell is like a totally foreign company or some sort of cycling that they're doing with these email addresses are usually very strange. But the one thing that I think is really scary is when people get text messages. I've had people get text messages asking for them to send me gift cards. And it supposedly looks like it's coming from my name and it's on their phone. But I guess the underlying tag number that you don't see right off the bat is really not my number. So, but their phone is showing. I don't know. It's some weird thing happened that way. And then the other thing is people send emails that look like they have your name on it, but when you actually click it to see the email address underneath, it's just a faceplate of your name. And there's some weird stuff there that I've seen, heard, and experienced.
It's very scary. And I think there's a lot of cyber criminals using what's called spoofing. And that could be through a phone number. So making it look like the phone call is coming from a different number than where it's actually originating. Same thing for an email or a text message. They have the ability to almost hide where that initial phone number, email address is actually coming from. Because a lot of times if we could see where it was actually coming from, it'd be obvious right off the bat that it was fraudulent, and we probably wouldn't be as likely to open it. So they're definitely doing this strategically as part of the scam, as part of the overall almost trick to get us to click into it and believe what we're seeing or reading or hearing on the phone.
Thank you, Christina. If you're just joining us, we have Christina Kafari with Prudential. She's a director of sales technology, and she's talking to us about identity theft today, which is extremely enlightening in a lot of ways. We have a lot more information coming. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions coming up here. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com.
For a number of our listeners, they have a lot of questions, and you might be one of them. Today, we're just offering what we call Zoominars, webinars over Zoom meeting rooms, where we have top experts, Social Security, estate planning, and financial planning experts for you to speak with, do a private consultation that way today. We're also having webinar-based Zoominars where we're going to have multiple groups where you can be part of that and enjoy that as well. Give us a call at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com to schedule your Zoominar.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Do you have an annuity? Do you understand exactly how it works and when to use it? The likelihood is that you don't, or maybe you bought it a while ago because at the time it sounded like a good idea. But will it accomplish your goals? We are here to help you. Contact us about a free annuity review and learn what your annuity does, how it works, and how it can best help you with your retirement goals. It's absolutely free to you, and if there's a better way for you to accomplish your goals, this is a great way for you to learn about those opportunities too. Take the time to get educated, get empowered, make your retirement a success. Call us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben and Seth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. I'm Ben Brayshaw, joined here with Seth Cressman. Today, Dan Michelon is on vacation, so hopefully he's enjoying himself. But we have a much more friendly person on today than Dan, so we appreciate that. Christina Kafari is joining us from Prudential. She's a director of sales technology. Super happy to have you here, Christina, as we had talked earlier. You know, one of the questions we have is just kind of, can you just go around some of the misconceptions surrounding identity theft? I think that's one of the pieces that we touched on a little bit earlier, but would you mind just diving into that for us?
Of course. I see two of the most common misconceptions probably on a weekly basis in my role here. And the first misconception is that only older folks tend to be victims of identity theft. That if you are someone that maybe is under the age of 50, you don't have to worry about this. And the truth is that couldn't be more false. We know that regardless of where you are at within the life cycle, you can be a victim of identity theft. And one of the things that we're seeing happen most often is that children, so kids under the age of 18, are being targeted 10 times more often than adults for their Social Security number. So it's critically important for any of our listeners, especially if you're in that sandwich generation. You have to look out for yourself, your spouse, any older family ones or loved ones that you are responsible for that you're worried about. But you'll also have to protect any kids or grandkids as well, because we know that just because they're not 18 doesn't mean that they can't become victims of identity theft. Now, the second most common misconception that I hear all the time as it pertains to identity theft is, I won't be a victim of identity theft because I don't use a lot of technology. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that statement. And the truth is that you can be a victim of identity theft regardless of the amount of technology that you're utilizing on a day-to-day basis. You still have vulnerabilities, even if you consider yourself to be no tech, or if you consider yourself to be very, very high tech and using all of the latest and greatest gizmos and gadgets that are out there. To get a little bit more specific, for those of us who are considered to be no technology, you do have to be concerned about mail, getting paper statements, disposing of them properly. You also have to be concerned about all the items that are in your purse and your wallet. You don't need that social security card in your wallet anymore. Hopefully you can leave that at home in a safe place. If you are high technology, we have to be careful of our smartphones, right? Our smartphones are little computers that we carry around in our pocket 24/7. We also have all of the data that the applications that we're using are collecting. We have our online banking accounts, E-Trade accounts. We also have our Wi-Fi networks. We're all now starting to use these smart home features with locks and windows and things of that sort, which can have vulnerabilities as well. So again, regardless of how much technology you are utilizing, you are still going to have vulnerabilities that you need to be aware of and that it's important to understand in order to be able to protect yourself.
One of the things I've noticed is really a transition. I'm thinking back about 10 years ago when it was, some crown prince from Africa and they were going to send us money, needed to get money out of the country. Actually, I'm thinking about now, there was something that came out of the Philippines recently on Facebook to me. And I was like, who are you? What are you trying to do? The appeal in kind of that greed is like, oh yeah, I want to get me some of that, royal money.
If they don't have the word crown prince in front of their name, I'm not responding.
Versus today, which there seems to be, what's the hook? And it seems to be more of a fear base of, hey, IRS agents are on their way to, seize your assets or, break down your door, or we're going to shut down your social security number. It's been a little bit since I've gotten one of those calls. Or, just the familiarity of, like you said, I got one from Disney Plus and I had to shut it all down and backtrack. So those being kind of the avenues in. The other thing I've noticed is that, we don't even realize how we're living our lives so much through our phone, and that data there being super accessible. What are some of the things that we can do to, maybe protect ourselves a little bit more on our phone?
That is a really great question, and probably the most common question that we've been fielding over the past year to 18 months. Our phones have really become our lifeline. I know for myself personally, I use it as an alarm clock every morning. I don't even have an alarm clock in my room any longer. So we have become extremely reliant on our cell phones. And I think because of that, we tend to overlook some of the risks associated with having our phones on our person 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right now, your smartphone is likely filled with applications that are collecting a ton of different details about you. So, for example, your age, gender, political leanings, your GPS data, so where you're going, where you're coming from, your browsing habits, your accelerometer, which is tracking how fast you're going somewhere, how often you might be getting outside for walks, your Bluetooth, right? So all of the speakers and any of these rental cars that you're hooking up to, your light sensor, your microphone, your Wi-Fi data, your call logs, SMS messages, app logs, your camera access, your battery status, and lastly, and most importantly, your location settings. And the reason that I took the time to go through all of those different aspects is because those are what we know about at the moment. What we do know is that there is a whole world out there for what we call data brokers. And what they do is they buy and sell all of this information that these apps are tracking for us. And the whole entire point of these data brokers is to figure out how to best advertise to us. Now, on the surface, this sounds simple and it doesn't really sound too threatening. But the reality is that when you are collecting all of this data on individual people, if that data is not taken care of properly, if it falls into the wrong hands, it could really give away a lot of information about us personally. And the issue with that is criminals can then use that negatively against us. You mentioned earlier on the show how you're surprised how criminals have all this information. This is one of the aspects as to how they're getting their hands on this information. Because these data brokers are largely operating in a space that is completely unregulated, there really is no body watching to see what they're collecting, who they're selling it to, and how often they're selling the same data over and over and over again. So it's really important for us as consumers to monitor the apps that we download onto our device and determine if we need or want to share all of this data with these companies. Because the silver lining to this is that we do have control over how we share our location and the number one cause of robocalls. So if you're someone that is still getting robocalls even today, the answer to that is probably the amount of applications that you're sharing your location with. So the last thing that I will just say here is that you have the ability to decide how you want to share your location. So you can choose to share it always, never, or while using. There really aren't a lot of apps that need your location always. So you should be very careful about selecting that option. You should always try to select the while using option. Apps can use your location or access your location while you are using their app. Once you double click and close out of that app, they should no longer be able to access your location. That'll help prevent you giving away information that you don't really need to or want to be giving away.
Christina, I've seen this notification, on my Apple device. So can you explain more about it? What is it exactly?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you've seen this notification. That is great news. So what Apple has decided to do is take matters into their own hands and really put some guardrails on some of these companies that are collecting a lot of our information and selling that information to make a profit. So what they developed is a feature called App Tracking Transparency. And what that allows you to do is to choose whether an application can track your activity across other companies' applications and websites for the purposes of advertising. In the privacy settings of your cell phone, under tracking, you can actually block this access. So you can go into your settings, you can go into App Tracking Transparency, and there'll be a little icon that you could tap. And what this will do is it will allow apps to request to track you. And what that means is that you can now take control and decide whether apps are going to track you outside of their application. And it's important to know that it's outside of their applications. So certain apps like Google or Facebook, they may be able to continue tracking your data as part of the user agreement for that platform. So for example, if you're agreeing to all of their user terms, you more than likely are agreeing to allow Google and Facebook to a lot of information. But what Apple is going to do is they're only going to let Google and Facebook take the information from their app. They're no longer going to let them say, all right, well, after they left the Facebook application, they went to Instagram, and then they went to their email, and then they went on to the internet and started watching YouTube videos, right? So it's going to prevent them from really digging into what you're doing outside of their application. And to be honest, it's just a start. I think we're going to see a lot more features and a lot more ability for each of us as individuals to really take control and start to block some of these apps from gaining access to our information.
So, Christina, do you have any tips, recommendations for credit cards or peer-to-peer payment applications? I know that's one of the main ways that people are doing business today.
Yeah, that certainly has become more and more popular, especially since the start of the pandemic. 78% of Americans are now starting to use peer-to-peer payment systems. And this is really interesting for a lot of different reasons. The biggest reason is that for a lot of us, when we talk about peer-to-peer payment systems, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of different platforms. There's Apple Pay, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, etc. And for the most part, they are all technologically secure. So what that means is that they're using their 256-bit encryption, which is the requirement for the financial world. However, despite the fact that they are technologically secure, there are still many, many scams that you need to be aware of. And what we're starting to see is that these peer-to-peer payment apps are incredible because they allow you to send and receive money extremely fast. They typically have low or no fees associated with them, and it gives you the ability to access money instantly. But what we're also seeing is we're starting to see people make mistakes and accidentally give away their money. So first and foremost, make sure you know the recipient. Make sure you're positive who you're sending money to. In a lot of these apps, once you send it, it's gone. You cannot just simply say, oh, you know what? I didn't mean to send that to you. Can I have it back? Most of the time, the only way to get money back is for the person to just be kind enough to want to send it back to you. So if you send it to the wrong person, we know that that person has the ability to decide to keep that money. Now, it's different than your banking accounts, right? Some of them might be FDIC insured, but most of them are not. So there really is no regulatory body that's watching over the transactions or making sure that mistakes are not happening on the platform. It's also important to keep all transactions private. We know some of these are operating as social media sites, and it might be funny for you to share what you're paying, what you had for dinner, but at the same time, it's just a risk. You're just letting people know who's close in your circle, who you're sending money to and why, and it makes it easy for scammers to replicate and pretend to be those folks in order to get you to send them money as well.
Christina, that's great. Hold on one second. We got to take a quick break. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. We have Christina Cafari here with us. She's the Director of Sales Technology with Prudential. And it's just, we're talking about identity theft, and stick around. We've got solutions for you on how to help yourself avoid some of these pitfalls. And I'm excited to bring that back to you. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
And now, here's our Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap.
We've been talking about predictable income in an unpredictable market. I mean, I think that's the thing that has a lot of people calling, a lot of people reaching out to us saying, hey, listen, I thought I could do this on my own. I thought this was going to work out for me, and I was going to make, another 15 or 20% or whatever that you made last year in the stock market, and things were going great. And now people have this kind of awareness that, oh, wait, I don't control this anymore.
Tell you this, Ben, there are some truths in this world. We know that people do not like to lose money. I have never come across a single person that says, yeah, that's me. I would like to lose some money. And if you are one of those people, you probably want to retire at some point in time, or you're all across the spectrum here, folks. You know what? In retirement planning, which is the gift of what we get to do here at Brayshaw Financial Group, it is one of the most important factors that we come across when we're trying to establish what the new norm is going to be for our clients and what the opportunities are.
I think you're right on there, Seth. And then I think the biggest fear people have is, what are they going to think I did? Or why didn't I pull the trigger soon enough? Or the concern of people wondering whether or not they have enough to sit down with somebody. I mean, if you have concerns, it's time to sit down with somebody. If you feel like you're not in control, or you're not in a seat that, you feel comfortable in your financial well-being, it's time to work with somebody. But at the end of the day, people think like there's this mountain from us to them sometimes to just make the phone call and sit down. I mean, just call, find out. Who cares? No one's judging. No one's thinking about this. This is about your well-being. This is about you getting the best future you possibly can. That's one of the reasons why we call it our email box is info@yourmoneyontap.com, because it's about your money. If you're not concerned about it and you're not sure and you're losing money and you're concerned, if the market goes down another 20%, I bet you there is a massive number of people on this listening to us today that are saying, I won't be able to retire. I just lost 40% of my money. And if you think that that's not possible and you're listening, let me remind you about 2008 and 2009, that people were going back to work. People literally changed their retirement, not goals. They changed everything about their retirement because they lost so much money, not taking precautions in retirement. If you're not a person who's taking any sort of safety in retirement and creating predictable income in this very unpredictable market, it's a buyer beware. And I would encourage people to sit down with us right away, because there are always things and opportunities potentially that you can do to make your situation better when you're working with an expert and just kind of figuring out whether it's estate planning, income planning, general retirement, future retirement.
It's got to be worth it to hear the options. I mean, just for the fact that the conversation, the consultation's absolutely free to you. Why not come in and give us a chance to review what you have and have us give you an opinion on it. Whether it works for you or doesn't, that's okay. That's a chance we take. It's a chance you'll take coming to us, and I think it's well worth your time. I mean, the one thing we've never told anybody is take what you got and go buy scratch tickets. That's your only hope. So that's not what you're going to hear from us. So take that opportunity to come in and hear what us professionals have to say. Right?
Thanks for joining us for this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, with great tips from the pros in three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. Now here's more Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. I'm Ben Brayshaw, joined here with Seth Cressman and our special guest, Christina Kafari, with Prudential. She's the Director of Sales Technology, is speaking to us about identity theft. And we've had a great time here, Christina, kind of working through a lot of, the phishing scams, the technology pieces, all of those components. And can you bring us back in? And I'd really like to round this show out with some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves from identity theft as well.
Absolutely. So the two biggest things that we can do to protect ourselves are, first and foremost, to monitor our credit reports. And you can do this one of two ways. You can do it manually by going to the websites and checking, or you can enroll in credit monitoring services. The second option to help make sure you're preventing against identity theft is to freeze your credit. So let's go through the first, which is monitoring your credit reports. Your credit report is your financial transcript. It's going to keep track of every single account that you've ever opened, whether it's closed today or still currently open. So if someone has opened any fraudulent accounts in your name, it's going to be on your credit report. Now, each and every single one of us is entitled to 3 completely free credit reports per calendar year. We get 1 from each of the 3 major credit bureaus. So 1 from Experian, 1 from TransUnion, and 1 from Equifax. You can actually access all 3 of these credit reports from one website. It's called annualcreditreport.com. And as I mentioned, you can go on every 3 to 4 months and pull your credit reports, and you can verify and make sure that everything on there is accurate, it's correct, and it's something that you're responsible for. If you notice accounts on there that you don't remember opening, that could be a sign of identity theft. And right within your credit report are instructions and the steps to start to close that account, to report to the credit bureau that that is not an account that you're responsible for, and to really begin the mitigation process. The other option you have, instead of pulling your credit report every 3 to 4 months, is enrolling in credit monitoring services. So these are services like LifeLock or Triple Alert and they monitor your credit reports for you on a daily basis. And typically they cost about $20 to $30 a month. I will say there are a lot of places now that are starting to offer this for free. So credit cards or banks, if you have a certain type of card or account, a lot of employers are starting to offer it as part of their benefits. And then also, if you've been a victim of any major data breach, a lot of times they are required to offer you credit monitoring services as part of almost the punishment for some of those data breaches. To transition into the second option that we have to prevent identity theft would be to freeze your credit. This is probably going to be the safest thing you can do, because while your credit is frozen, nobody, including yourself, can open up new lines of credit. Personally, I think the new normal moving forward will be folks will leave their credit frozen indefinitely, and they'll only unfreeze it when they need to open up new lines of credit. When they need to go buy a car, they want to take out a new credit card, maybe they want to refinance their mortgage, they'll call, they'll unfreeze, they'll take out that line of credit, and then they can call to freeze again. One tip is you have the ability to freeze your credit in whatever fashion you feel comfortable with. So you can do it online or you can do it over the phone. But when you freeze your credit, they will give you a confirmation number, and it's critically important that you remember this confirmation number, because they will not let you unfreeze your credit unless you provide to them the confirmation numbers that they gave you when you initially froze it. So make sure you keep them in a very safe place. And remember, you'll have 3 of them, because you need to freeze your credit at each of the 3 major credit bureaus. So one from Experian, one from Equifax, and one from TransUnion. And again, try to keep them in as safe of a place as you can, because it will be a total bummer if you lose them. It will take you a longer time to unfreeze that credit. And for most of us, we kind of want to be able to flip that switch on and off whenever we need to be able to do that.
Gosh, that sounds like people in their crypto wallets losing the access keys and losing millions and millions of dollars because they couldn't get into their wallets. Is there any way to determine, if somebody has compromised my information?
The easiest way to be able to determine that would be to check your credit report. Again, if they opened an account using your name and social security number, it will be on that credit report. There are certain types of fraud that might not actually show up on your credit report, though. So just because you don't see anything there doesn't always necessarily mean you're 100% in the clear. Some other indicators that something might be strange is if you're starting to get denials of credit that maybe you didn't apply for, you're starting to get different account statements of things that don't make sense to you or that you don't recall ever opening or receiving before. You also might start to notice that there are different emails popping into your email account. There are different pop-ups or SMS messages that you're getting onto your phone. And these could all just be a result of you getting on some type of list, being affected by some type of data breach, and someone being able to dig up additional information to piece together all of the items they need in order to open these accounts, in order to purchase, a massive amount of cell phones or sneakers or credit cards or any subscriptions that they might be trying to get their hands on. And so there's a number of different ways. The biggest is if it seems suspicious, it more than likely is suspicious. If you get a bad feeling, go with your gut, investigate it, and make sure that you have all of your pieces in a row and that there are nothing out of place.
I think the gut thing is the one item, like when you have that kind of unnervy, like, man, I don't think that felt right. Even in the smallest scenario, double checked, correct it, make sure you're okay. Christina, thank you so much. Honestly, this was super informative. Appreciate your time and your willingness to join us. You're significantly better to have on the show than Dan. I want to leave that out there for him to hear. And Missing him, though. Hope he has a great vacation. But if you have questions on identity theft, and I know a lot of our listeners do, we've had a number of clients who have been hit by this. We talked about that earlier. Give us a call, 855-226-8551. We're planners and partners at Brayshaw Financial Group, and we're here to help you. You can email us with your questions at info@yourmoneyontap.com. If you got a question for Christina too, we're happy to pass that on to her and try to get some answers on maybe some more detailed stuff that might be out there. So thank you, Christina. Thank you, Seth. Thank you for listening, everybody, and you make it a great week.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551. This material is being provided for informational or educational purposes only and does not take into account the investment objectives or financial situation of any clients or prospective clients. The information is not intended as investment advice and is not a recommendation about managing or investing a client's retirement savings. Clients seeking information regarding their particular investment needs should contact a financial professional.
Well, bye.